I think there's different ways to approach it, and obviously there's different degrees of accountability. There's at the most extreme, it's obviously people don't have their job anymore when they don't do the things that you want them to do, and oftentimes though it's not usually that black and white. Jack Welch, I reference Jack a lot when I talk about background in my GE days. And if you remember, one of the things Jack really talked about was the 2x2 box, right? You have your performance and you have your culture, or your values. And the first people that Jack would take out would be the people that are high performers that didn't share the values. I would not be part of a company that did anything different than that. But it's usually the extremes of where it's obvious. The harder ones, Stephen, are where you've got somebody that, yeah, they're not really, they're not fully acting the way we want them to, but they're such a high performer. And I can tell you, we don't do that. I mean, if you don't live the values of our company, and if you don't behave the way that we want to do it, and by the way, I've worked at plenty of companies that didn't do this, where they let the gray be broader and broader and broader. To me, it's usually not broad, it's usually directional. If somebody kind of buys into your culture, or if they don't. And it's usually not a case where it's that difficult to figure out which direction they're in. I think what you have to do as a company, if you find yourself in a situation where you have people they don't share your values, they can't be part of your company, because the message that sends to the rest of your employees is just one where, the values really don't mean that much unless if the person's really high performer. And I will tell you, I'm not going to get into specifics, because I'm obviously not going to do that, but we have made some tough calls on some really strong performance that just didn't share the values. And we're a very tight leadership team. We get along really well. That doesn't mean we don't argue. That doesn't mean some of us are better with the Discovery Channel. Some of us are better with the History Channel. But, we do get along pretty well. But we would not tolerate somebody on the leadership team, for example, that didn't treat their fellow senior leader with respect, and didn't really collaborate, work together. So where it shows itself for us is, in our leadership behaviors, which are really focused around collaboration, around teamwork, around performance. We are a performance-driven culture, but that doesn't mean that we don't have empathy and we don't have the ability to forgive and give people chances. It's just, but at the end of the day, you can't be in the most critical roles. We have what we call critical roles in the company. You can't be in the most critical roles in this company and not be a high performer. So we tend to try to, and by the way, that didn't always exist. I mean, this is a company that's had, as I said, hundreds of years of success. In the past, there was more, what I would say, more credit that was given to long tenure than necessarily skill set. And I think the company's moved to where the traditions are critical and important, but you have to also have the skills and capabilities of where we're going. And that was probably one of the more difficult transitions the company had to go through, because the talent of the future, in terms of skills and capabilities, is much more digital. It's much more what I would call modern, sophisticated, forward-looking. And that can be a challenge in some areas where you don't see a lot of change. I mean, we make decisions based on decades. We're not a public company, so we're not having to worry about reporting next quarter. We make investments that might not come to fruition for 15 years. And so we're more forward and more longer term looking. But I would say ultimately accountability really just comes down to, what do you do when someone doesn't perform? And what do you do when someone doesn't share your values? And we're a lot more forgiving on the performance as long as we see potential than we are if you don't share the values.